Hello. Today, Debbie and I want to encourage you, especially if you are a married couple and if you have got little kids at home during lockdown right now.
I was reading an interesting article about the effects of lockdown, particularly for countries that are a little bit ahead of us as far as lockdown is concerned. And we can learn a lot from them as far as health is concerned. But the other thing that we can learn is the impact on families and on relationships. So the article that I read is in Bloomberg on the 31st of March, and the headline said that China's divorce rates spike after lockdown restrictions were relaxed in Wuhan. And that's quite an alarming headline of saying that the after effect of lockdown is that people did not enjoy the time they spent with those that are closest to them. And so we thought we want to talk through some practical things so that lockdown can be a positive experience for you as a couple and for you as a family, because I do believe that if we are intentional, lockdown can be a real blessing for our families and not a catalyst for catastrophe.
There's a saying that goes, absence makes the heart grow fonder. And during lockdown, that dynamic seems to be less appropriate in the home. And so we need to create some spaces that will make the heart grow fonder.
That's
because
right.
absence is not there.
Yeah, in Wuhan, they found as people came out of lockdown, one of the frustrations that people said is that the more time they spent together, the more they hated each other, which is a very sad comment on their relationship. One of the divorce lawyers in that area said that there'd been a 25% increase in couples applying for divorce. And previously, the main reason for divorce had been infidelity, where now it seems that people are just saying they don't enjoy living together. So how do you make living together 24/7 a positive experience? I know for many of us, we enjoy having a bit of space apart from one another. And it's not just space apart from each other, it's also in different roles. When we're home, I tend to put on the mommy and the cooking hat. When I'm in the office, I have different conversations. And so having everything all mixed up in the same space, it can get a bit confusing.
Absolutely.
So one of the things that we've done, and you guys can try some other things to make sure that you get into your own rhythms and routines. I'm a bit of an early bird, and so I usually wake up quite early, and that gives me time to have some time to myself, to think my own thoughts, to have time with God, to maybe get some work done, or on a relaxing day to watch my own TV show, and then later on when Johan wakes up, we might have a breakfast or a brunch together, and then I'm looking forward to seeing him. But we've got to make space for each other so that when we do spend time together, that it's positive time.
And I think it's also important to make sure that we all know when that space is for each other. So it's not going to happen spontaneously. Very few people will work it out that way. But you've got to sit down and actually determine what those spaces are going to look like. The other reason that people fight a lot during this time is about money.
Yes, I'll give you an example from the article. Mrs. Wu, a housewife in her 30s, spent 2 months in isolation with her out-of-work husband. They fought constantly, and she listed a familiar list of concerns. Too little money, as you've mentioned, too much screen time, housework and childcare not evenly split, and she used to get particularly annoyed with her husband's habit of engaging the children in play in the evening just before they were supposed to go to bed.
At another time, we're going to give you some insight into the money side of this, particularly. But the kids, that's a very interesting one. And
it used to drive me mad when our children were little. I've worked a long day, finally got a decent meal in their stomachs, they're clean, and I'm looking forward to having some time without the kids. And that's when you decided to play catches or hide and seek.
I just, you know what, maybe there's a few dads who will agree with me out there. It's when they just bath, they fed, they at their best, and it's the best time to play. But in fairness, that is also the time they need to slow down because it is closer to sleep time. So those are conversations that need to be had without killing each other's fun and wanting to mess up appropriate times for certain things, it is fair to have a conversation, and that's what we did.
We moved bath time a little bit earlier so that we had half an hour that you could play with them, and they would still get to bed at a decent time.
Yeah.
And the routines, I think, is something that's constantly changing as the children go through different phases. To be intentional to chat with them and discuss what time is bedtime, what time is getting up in the morning time, when is playtime. Just like we need space for each other, they also need to know when is the time when they can play and when is the time when they need to do structured activities.
Yeah. And especially if you are a couple who are both working hard online right now, you guys have to have certain routines with your kids. And can I just say this? It's not a good idea to have your kids sit in front of a screen the whole day. There has to be some time where they interact with you, interact with each other, go play outside. But that again needs to be a discussion. It needs to be a routine that needs to be established with the kids.
One of the things that we found really helpful, and it's something that we still do today, is that we make sure that we eat one meal a day, sometimes more, but at least one meal a day.
Very
that
good.
we will all sit down together around the table without distractions, no cell phones, and we'll just focus on each other.
Yeah.
And when lockdown started, I was almost tempted to not be as intentional about it because we were seeing each other all day. But we realized that we actually need to have that time to look each other in the eye and to find out, how was your day? What are you struggling with? And what are you enjoying, and to connect with one another.
And listen, these conversations are not going to be easy always, and some tension will arise out of them, and some fights will arise out of them. And listen, fights will happen, but we need to have good fights.
Some people get shocked when we talk about the concept of a good fight.
You can have a good fight. We need to get the tension out. We need to talk about it, but it needs to be done with respect.
Yes.
So don't have bad fights. Have a good one.
And the mark of a bad fight is when people end up hurt, when people are disrespected. When you have a good process of disagreement, everybody gets a chance to express how they're feeling. And sometimes it's really hard to sit quietly and wait until somebody's finished saying their piece, especially if you maybe disagree or you want to bring in a different angle. But we need to make space for each person to express their views, and then once everybody's had a turn to explain what they think will work, as a family you need to decide together what you're going to do, and you need to have that agreement up front. That whatever we decide together, we're going to implement together, even if it's just a trial of 1 week to try what we're going to be doing. But we need to work through things. And another tip, don't put lots of topics on the table at one go.
Yeah.
Do one topic at a time and be clear. Tonight we're talking about whatever it is.
Yeah. And there are going to be times when you're going to say things that you shouldn't say. You're going to be emotional. You're going to be angry. You know what? We are children of God, and God has given us the way to restore our relationship and make sure that bitterness doesn't creep into it. And so there needs to be a time of repentance and forgiveness. So don't be afraid to say, I'm sorry.
And forgiveness sometimes is a process. Forgiveness, I believe, as Christians is something that we don't just receive, but we need to be intentional to give forgiveness, wholehearted forgiveness. And don't bring up previous hurts and situations. We need to forgive one another, be reconciled, and move on and build relationships that are going to be supportive and that are going to help one another grow and thrive.
Yeah, and this will happen. It's not fair to assume that there will not be some frustration. And I think it's one of the reasons why our government said no alcohol in the homes during this time. I would propose no machetes either. But that's just so we need to take care of one another, and family meetings, very important. We need to sit around a table, talk about things and so on, and just communicate.
Communication is so important, and I think poor communication or people feeling frustrated and not heard is one of the reasons why we see an increase in domestic violence. particularly during a period like this with lockdown,
Yeah.
which, as you said, let's get the alcohol and the machetes out the house. But what do we practically bring in?
Yeah.
How do you deal with frustrations?
Very good, yeah.
And I think from a woman's perspective, I think we need to be intentional not to nitpick and nag. I know sometimes I have to think carefully, do I need to discuss this now? And to give people space, especially with teenagers in the house. I'm often tempted to nag, but to have some agreed principles on who's going to do what, when, and to accept that things are not always going to be perfect, and to give each other space for time to relax.
Yeah.
Because frustration can quickly escalate into something that can get really, really ugly.
And I think it's important to, sometimes there's a moment when you're not ready to talk, but it's not fair to let that moment pass for days on end, because it just builds up, and that's not healthy. And can I speak to the guys for a moment out there? Godly men do not vent their frustrations on their wives and their children, or on anything for that matter. We learn how to take control of our emotions. We learn to open up to our families and to our wives. We learn to communicate our frustrations and deal with it in any other way. And if one of the ways you need to vent your frustration is to hit something, go outside on your own, find something, go scream in a pillow, go hit a pillow, go hit something, go, smack a tree, but do not take your frustrations out on your family. That is not what godly men do. That does not help anybody. So I want to encourage you, live a life of peace and control your emotions.
So those are some things not to do. Let's talk a little bit about what to do. And I think something that we've found very practical and helpful in our marriage, and something which we talked a lot about last year at date night, is communication skills. And I want to recommend that if you haven't done so yet, that you do some of those courses. They're available for free on Right Now Media. And one of the techniques that's discussed in the course on the crazy cycle is talking about reflecting. And reflecting means that I'm not going to be having a conversation where I'm trying to win the argument. Reflecting says I want to understand you, and the way that I do that is I'm going to focus what I'm saying in reflecting back to you on what I think you're saying. And it's a really simple principle, but it is incredibly profound. What we found is that it doesn't usually happen the first time.
No.
Sometimes we're so quick to answer something that we think the other person has
or
said.
defend yourself.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we don't need to defend yourself. You need to try and phrase back to the person to say, okay, so I can see you feeling frustrated with the work, or I can see you must be feeling disappointed, or you're feeling anxious about the finances. To phrase back to them what you hear that they're saying until they feel understood.
It's the principle of hearing before you are being heard. And I often find myself in situations where I'm offended by something you say or I think you said, and then I defend myself, and I can see in the look on your face, that's not actually what you said. And it's because I didn't take the time to just take a moment, curb my emotions, and just say, am I hearing you correctly? Is this what you're saying to me right now? Because it is important, if we can have healthy conversations, to make sure that you understand. I understand you first before I can expect you to understand me.
We used to have quite fun when we were newly married. Sometimes the person just needs to know that somebody else cares. So I found I used to come home and I used to start moaning about an issue, and then you would try and fix it. And I couldn't.
Of course, that's what I'm here to do.
And I couldn't understand why I felt frustrated in the conversation until I realized I actually just want somebody to hear what I'm saying. And so I would start the conversation with, poor me. And then you would know.
That's it. Don't fix it, just listen.
Yeah, and our joke between the two of us was the only words he was allowed to say is, poor you. That's terrible. But it's incredible the closeness that gets built when you feel that you have been heard and understood. And especially as we spend time together and as we navigate quite a lot of changes and a lot of stresses, now more than ever we need to build good communication and make sure that we understand one another and that we're caring for one another.
And that's very, very important, because that's going to keep the love in the house, keep the peace in the house. And something else we need to do is we need to have fun.
We do.
We need to have fun. You have to have fun. You have to have moments to have fun and have time together. Today we're going to have a braai.
We are?
We are. We're going to make a fire. We're going to have a braai. Everybody's going to drop everything they're doing. We're going to sit around the braai, and we're just going to communicate and connect with one another. If you've got smaller kids, you need to play games. You need to play board games. If you don't have board games, make up a game.
Build a tent fort in the lounge.
Yes, that's right. Do something, but you've got to play. You've got to have time to have fun. You cannot afford to go to bed day after day being stressed, your kids being stressed. So have fun. Connect with each other. Celebrate the good things. Be grateful. Thank each other for things. Thank not just God for the food, but thank each other, whoever's making the food, and just acknowledge one another as part of the family.
And support one another in prayer, and be each other's cheerleaders. And as you say, have fun. You can decide to do a crazy day.
That's right.
But make sure that you get into healthy rhythms, that this time is not just going to be a time that we look back on where the world was different, but where it's going to be a time that our families grow closer together, and that God can use this time to strengthen our families and strengthen our church as we grow closer together and understand one another better.
So we are praying for you, especially for your marriages, and if you have small kids at home, we're praying that God will give you wisdom. Remember, Spirit of God is in your home. He's not separated from what we're going through right now, and He's right here, asking for wisdom, asking for guidance, asking for patience, peace, all those things that love are made up of. We are praying for you. We are excited that something really good for our marriages and for our families will come out of this time. So our encouragement to you is, don't just hang in there. Have fun. Grow. And we will be back to encourage you again. So bless you, love you, and go in peace.
Hey, I hope you enjoyed that. Please can you like, follow, and subscribe, and turn on notifications to stay in touch with all of our latest content. If you have any feedback for us, you can drop it in the comment sections. If you have any prayer requests, you can also drop it in the comment sections, or head over to our DM and drop us a request there, or alternatively, you can go over to our website and leave it there. Or you could also keep in touch with us by dropping us a text on our WhatsApp line. Remember, stay connected. Have a good one.